אורל? אורל? אורל, אני לא רואה את ההצגה שפה הכל פיקס, כי פה זה משהו אחר. מושלם. אפשר בינתיים להחזיר לשקופית הראשונה? שקט בעולם. מבקשת להחזיר לשקופית הראשונה? אין, אוקיי, סבבה. גיא? בן? תבדוק עם איתי לוי אם הוא פה, אם אני קוראת לו או לא. בוקר טוב לנוף הגליל. אני מבקשת מכולם להתחשב במצב של קופסת סרדינים, והעולם הצפוף מרוב שכולם מתרגשים ורוצים לשמוע את ההרצאה ולהיות נוכחים באירוע. אנחנו מנסים להיות בשקט. עכשיו, אנחנו מכבדים את המעמד, מעבירים את הטלפונים על השתק, כדי שלא יהיו מצבים לא נעימים. יופי. בוקר טוב לכולם, אני מרינה חץ מספייס ואלי, ובשם נוף הגליל אני גאה לארח את אחד האירועים הגדולים והרשמיים של שבוע החלל הישראלי 2023. שבוע החלל הישראלי מתקיים השנה בפעם ה-11 ברחבי הארץ, ובהובלת סוכנות החלל הישראלית במשרד החדשנות, המדע והטכנולוגיה. השבוע כולל ירידים, הפעלות, הרצאות מרתקות וכנסים חינוכיים ומדעיים לאורחים מהארץ ומרחבי העולם. השנה נושא שבוע החלל הוא Earth and Space Becoming One, ומתמקד בכל הדרכים שחקר החלל מקדם את החיים שלנו על כדור הארץ. בנוסף, השבוע אינו בסימון 40 שנה להקמת סוכנות החלל הישראלית, ובזיכרון ל-20 שנה לאסון מעבורת קולומביה, ופטירתם של 7 חברי הצוות על המעבורת, וביניהם האסטרונאוט הישראלי הראשון, אילן רמון, זיכרונו לברכה. איתי לוי כאן איתנו? איתי לוי כאן איתנו? איתי לוי? לא. מעולה. אנחנו מתכבדים לארח לאורך כל השבוע 2 אסטרונאוטים מנאסא, אשר הגיעו לספר את סיפורם וללמד אותנו על חווייתם ומשימתם בחלל. אני אתכבד להזמין לבמה את האסטרונאוט מר רנדי ברזניק. רנדי ברזניק למד אימוני תעופה והכשרה לטיסה בפלורידה ואימוני טייס מתקדמים בטקסס, והוכשר כטייס של הצי בשנה 1992. ב-1999 הוא נכנס לקורס היוקרתי של ניסויי טיסה בפקסטון ריבר במרילנד, ולאחר מכן הוצב כטייס ניסוי וקצין פרויקט בטייסת לבחינת שיפורים ושדרוגים של כלי טייס חדשים. ברזניק צבר למעלה מ-6,000 שעות טיסה על 81 כלי טייס שונים. ברזניק נבחר להיות האסטרונאוט בחודש מאי 2004, אחד משני הטייסים שנבחרו במחזור הזה. בפברואר 2006 הוא סיים את אימוני הדרכת האסטרונאוטים, בין השאר הוא השתתף כמומחה משימה, מהנדס טיסה בשיגורים שונים לתחנת החלל הבינלאומית, ואף היה מפקד התחנה הבינלאומית בשנת 2017. I'm honored to invite NASA astronaut Randy Breznik to the stage. This is your clicker. You have, it works. This is the same one. Okay? And you have a water.
All right.
Okay? Good? Lights on? Lights on.
Can we dim the lights on the stage?
Yes. Just a second. אפשר לכבות את האורות מעל הבמה?
No. 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 Other way around. Dim the lights on the stage.
הפוך, את הבמה להחשיך ואת העולם להשאיר. Thank you. Good?
Later, we'll turn those lights down. Shalom. All right. Good morning. So as you come up towards Israel from the southwest, you come across the Nile River, Cairo, and the Nile River Delta, and you can see Israel just before the sun comes up and brightens the whole earth. I'm here this week in Israel because it's the 20th anniversary of the Columbia accident that Elon Ramon was on board of. He and his crew perished as they came back to Earth after their mission, but we remember them and their legacy every year. Just last week in Houston, this was the memorial we have for Elon Ramon in America, where we plant a tree for all the astronauts that have perished. And so this was the tree in his name in Houston at the Johnson Space Center. You know, there's nothing better to remember people by than their words and their deeds. And it's wonderful that we have this history of Elon and his space flight and how he started never thinking he could become an astronaut, but yet, you know, knew he wanted to fly. And that led him to becoming an astronaut eventually. He certainly, you know, loved flying airplanes here. This is the T-38. He flew on the Space Shuttle Columbia. And he was with his crew that he worked and trained with and did science and experiments with when they were on orbit. This year, you know, this past year, you had, you know, Eitan Steve go to space, come home, and you're going to be able to see him. I'm told next month he's going to come here. So it'll be wonderful for him to be able to speak to you in Hebrew and not just in English. But opening up and reminding you that there is just this great big world out there, and there's incredible opportunities. He flew on a Dragon spacecraft with three other crew to the International Space Station and spent 17 days up there. They had an astronaut from Israel, from Canada, and then 2 Americans on board. And, you know, he reminded everyone that out of the tragedy of Elon Ramon not coming home, that there's hope and excitement for the future, especially for human spaceflight here in Israel. Like both of them, I was a pilot, a fighter pilot, and became a test pilot. I flew everything I could get my hands on. I just loved flying anything and everything. And I think that's one of the things that made me excited about becoming an astronaut. And unfortunately, nothing I ever flew here on Earth was fast enough to escape Earth's gravity. So I had to become an astronaut and joined the astronaut class in 2004. We had everything from a Navy SEAL, an Army helicopter pilot, an Air Force test pilot, myself, a couple of medical doctors, 3 Japanese, a couple engineers, an astrophysicist, 3 educators, and 1 medical doctor who was an oncologist, a cancer doctor. So we had a wide variety of people and experiences in our astronaut class. And then in 2009, I got an opportunity to fly on the Space Shuttle Atlantis for an 11-day mission. We were going up to take up supplies and do construction on the outside of the space station. But one additional thing that we had on board of Atlantis on that flight was this banner. And this banner was actually made by the children who were in the preschool at the Jerusalem YMCA. And so what is the tie to that? Well, it turns out the Jerusalem YMCA was built by my wife Rebecca's great uncle back in the 1920s. And he was buried actually over here at the YMCA in Peniel, just north of Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee. And so when he finished building the YMCA in Jerusalem, he came up here and he lived, and that's where he passed away, and he still is. And so that's our family's connection. And so that banner that you saw is still in Jerusalem. It has about 4 million miles of frequent flyer miles on it going around the earth. And so you can go see that anytime you're in Jerusalem. We also train to extreme environments. This is a picture of our training in Sardinia in the caves of Italy. And if we could dim these first set of stage lights, that'd be great. And this is our base camp, 2 kilometers from the surface of the Earth. And why did we train in places like this? It's so that we could go ahead and get an environment that was not comfortable to us, something very different. And so you can imagine 2 miles from the surface of the Earth, there are no pathways, there's no lighting, there's no running water, there's no toilets, there's no anything. It is like another planet down there. And we took our international crew, Japanese, Russian, French, British, and myself, down under the ground, and we lived and explored the cave, mapping it, actually going to areas of the cave that had not been mapped yet, and doing exploration, which is what we would do when we go to another planet. This was, the only reason you see this is because over here you've got people putting lights into the water, and all of us are holding flashes like you'd see on the top of a camera, and we're hitting the button, and what we do is we open the aperture of the camera when it's pitch black, and then everybody shoots off their flashes for a couple seconds, and it paints the environment on the lens of the camera, and that gives us this image. But otherwise, it's pitch black, and all you have is the light that's on your helmet to look around, just like when we do our spacewalks. We also trained and took our international crew to the Aquarius habitat off the coast of Florida, where we had from Denmark, France, Canada, and myself. And we lived in the Aquarius habitat. And it's the only place left on Earth where human beings can go live underwater. And there's actually been, you know, when you live underwater for more than 24 hours, you're called an aquanaut. And so there's less aquanauts on human Earth than there are people that have left Earth as an astronaut. And then I got an opportunity to fly in a Soyuz out of Baikonur in Kazakhstan for a long duration mission where I lived on space station for 5 months. And the space station is there to do science, and it's a really neat opportunity, you know, as Elon said, to be able to contribute to life here on Earth. And we learn things up on the space station that we can't do here on Earth because of gravity, which gives us great opportunity. It's the harshest environment that humans live. You know, the Negev desert gets hot, but it's not as hot as the sun up on the space station, where it's plus 250 degrees Fahrenheit in the sun, minus 250 degrees in the shade. And so the systems and everything has to be engineered and manufactured and capable of those temperature swings when we go around the Earth every 90 minutes. So we have 45 minutes of sun and 45 minutes of darkness. We also have to do repairs. So we have to go into our spacesuits, which is your own personal spacecraft, and it has the backpack, which has the oxygen you need to breathe. It takes the carbon dioxide and scrubs that from when you exhale. It has a system that keeps you liquid cooling, that keeps you cool in the suit, and it has a system to warm you up when you're in the shade portion of the orbit. And so this is a view of what it looks like from the GoPro camera that I had on when you come out the bottom of the space station. When you come out, it's nothing between you and Earth except 400 kilometers of nothing. So you can imagine if we all went up to the top of the building up here and we put our toes on the edge and you stood over, you know, what your body would naturally feel. Imagine that times like 10,000. When you go outside, there's nothing but 400 kilometers of nothing below you. You come out and your body says, if I let go, I'm going to fall. And so we have to overcome that feeling and rely on the training we have to go ahead and be outside for 6 to 8 hours doing our spacewalks. And this is what it looks like when you're going 25,000 kilometers per hour on the space station. It's about 10 kilometers per second is how fast you're going. And if anybody was wondering, no, the Earth is not flat. So yes, we have to eat, but everything floats. We warm the pizzas up in our oven. So this is the American meat lovers pizza. And this is the Italian pizza. So we call those flying saucers of the edible kind. But the other part about being up in low Earth orbit is you're able to see the Earth. And when we weren't working, that was what we enjoyed doing the most, was looking back at our home planet. And, you know, to use Elon's words, you know, the planet is absolutely amazing and beautiful. And this is a picture that I took out on one of my spacewalks, just as the sun's about ready to come up and light up all the Earth underneath. You catch it and you're able to see just the atmosphere. And you think about how big the planet is, look how thin that atmosphere is. And that's the only reason that life exists on this planet. Houston, we have a problem.
Okay, we're not going to the moon. Okay, HDMI. You have to. Even to the moon. חברים, אפילו בדרך לירח ליוסטון היו בעיות. אז הכל טוב? We're good.
All right. So if you've ever heard of an aurora, this is what it looks like passing overhead. This is chemistry and physics happening in a picture. Because this is cosmic radiation particles impacting the particles of the upper parts of the Earth's atmosphere, creating these reactions and these colors and these lights. Was the translation a good one? I'll wait on you. Can you pick yourselves out in this picture? Up here? Certainly there are a lot of other enjoyable pictures of Israel as we were up in space, you know, looking directly overhead. You can see, you know, your whole country in this picture. Even Haifa, and probably you guys on the eastern side. Certainly at night you can see how much light there is. The Sea of Galilee, and then looking back down to the southwest towards Sinai. Being in space is physically fun. It feels joyful. It's like when you go swimming, except you don't have to hold your breath. So it is fun. It's, you know, even when you have to go take out the trash or go to the bathroom, you get to float to it, and it's fun every time you move around. And so that's what makes it, even though there's a lot of work up there, it makes it enjoyable to be able to float, to be able to look at the Earth when you're not working. But where are we going now? Just last month, the Artemis program sent Artemis 1 around the moon. And we had views like this for the first time. The Artemis program is like the Apollo program when America first went to the moon back in the 1960s. Now the Artemis program is bringing an international partnership to go to the moon. You have all these countries that have signed on the Artemis Accords, the rules, and These are the rules that all the countries are going to abide by when they go to space in the future. And so it's kind of like a United Nations type agreement, and you can see Israel is a member of it. The Artemis 1 mission launched last November and went and took a human-rated spacecraft around the moon for the first time. It's the world's largest, most powerful rocket, and it launched on November 16th last year. It has solid rocket motors on the outside, which are the white motors that are a lot like the shuttle program. And when it launched, it was the most amazing sound and vibration that anyone has felt. The engines put out about 8 to 9 million pounds of thrust, and so that was more thrust than what gravity could hold the rocket to the Earth by. And it launched on a 26-day mission where it flew for about 7 days to get to the moon. It entered a lunar orbit, did one orbit around the moon, and then came back to Earth. This is what it looks like when that 8 million pounds of thrust lights off, and all the violence of the water system that vaporizes to keep you from melting the launch pad. So then as Orion, the spacecraft, which is the part that the humans are on, it's up here. It's the silver portion. That's the capsule that's pressurized, that has the system that allows humans to live. The part on the bottom is called the service module. That has the propulsion, the gas, and the jets to be able to fire the engines to maneuver it. Has the solar panels to collect the energy and then pass that energy to the Orion capsule. And as it went to the moon, it started taking selfies. And so the Earth was pretty big, the moon was small, and then all of a sudden the Earth was small and the moon was big when it was in lunar orbit. Even to the point where we could have an Earthrise over the moon instead of moonrise that we get to see down here on Earth. You can see how the moon is just pock full of impacts from craters and meteorites over all the millions of years. And on December 11th, Artemis 1 came back in through the atmosphere, and the temperature around the heat shield was about at 5,000 degrees. So that's about half the temperature of the sun that it took to slow down from the velocities from coming back from the moon to where we could have the parachutes come out and land it in the ocean. We're getting ready for Artemis 2. That'll be in about 2 years. And we'll go ahead and put humans on Artemis 2, on Orion, for the first time. And that'll be the first time that humans have gone to the moon since 1972. We're going to build a space station around the moon. It's going to be called the Gateway, and you can see it's the international partnership with the European Space Agency, the Canadian, as well as the Japanese Space Agency. Perhaps maybe the Israeli Space Agency will join us. And from there, crews will go down to the lunar surface on a lunar lander. Back during Apollo, there was a small lunar lander. You can see how large the astronaut is over here on the left side. Well, now look at the SpaceX Starship that we're going to take back for the Artemis 3 mission. You can see how large the humans are here. This Starship is 50 meters tall. They are testing this Starship and its propulsion system already in Texas. They've had several flights. They've landed several of them, and so it's well on its way in development. The Starship that you land on is this 50 meters. The booster, the first stage, is below it. That's another 80 meters. So this whole entire rocket is 130 meters tall. And we're putting humans on the lunar surface to do exploration, to see the history of Earth that is reflected on the moon. We're able to go there and do science for the water that is in the ice that's on the moon. We're also there to possibly get sustainable energies. There's helium-3 mineral in the lunar soil that one truckload of helium-3 could supply Israel with enough electrical power for an entire year. Or, like some of the projects we saw before the presentation here, you could put solar panels on the north pole of the moon where it's in sunlight like 95% of the time. There is no atmosphere, there's no clouds, there's no weather, so pretty much it's almost an unlimited energy source coming from the sun. Now we just have to have engineering and perhaps use microwaves to be able to get that energy back from the north pole of the sun back to Earth. And that's a technical challenge that maybe you guys can help with. But we're not going to go, for our initial Artemis missions, we're not going to go to that North Pole of the sun. We're actually going to go to the South Pole. And that's kind of this, near this Shackleton crater in the middle of this video. And the sun never gets above about 6 degrees above the horizon, so there's always these big, long shadows. So that's going to be one of the challenges that we have. But it means that there's permanently shaded regions where the ice is, and ice is water. And if we can take that water and split it into rocket fuel, the hydrogen, or the air, the O2, to breathe, then that's less stuff that we have to take with us. And that's technology that's going to be helpful when we go to further away places. The crew's going to be able to get around with lunar rovers. This is what the first humans used back in the 1960s. And we're going to have a similar rover where the crews will be in spacesuits to be able to go do their spacewalks on the lunar surface, but be able to hop on a buggy and be able to get farther away. And eventually have a pressurized rover that the crew can be in shirt sleeves like we are now to be able to drive around and spend several days away from their spacecraft. And eventually be living and working on the moon as a way to show that our technologies work and we can live in hostile environments like that without an atmosphere and survive for long periods of time, because the moon is the proving ground for our goal by the 2030s to be able to go to Mars. And so when you look, this is looking out into our Milky Way from the International Space Station. And you can see how many stars there are. Almost in the middle of it, it's almost all white because it's so bright from all the stars. And we have a white dwarf of a sun in our solar system, and we have 9 planets because of its gravitational pull. Imagine how many planets are out there, and all the things that with the James Webb Telescope and other astronomy, we'll be able to figure out there may be other planets that humans can go to and live sometime. We just have to have the technology to be able to figure out how to get there. And so, Elon had some great words about Israel and how it has, developed and fought for what it has right now. And everything that, is becoming true here in Israel, it's a real, starting point for your country, and certainly you young people and your interest, your innovation, and your ability to go ahead and develop the future. That's what's becoming true. And so, this is a video that my crewmates and I put together to give you an idea of the emotion of what it's like to see your home planet from space. You can kill the lights, please.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw
תשמרו על שקט.
people talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs and voices never shared, and no one dared disturb the silence
הווידאו נעצר. אורל?
תלמידים, אני מבקשת לשמור על השקט ולא לשרוק. תכבדו את המקום ואת המעמד.
Glad you enjoyed that. It's on YouTube, so you can, you know, that is out there for everybody to look at, to share, to see what it's looked like to be from, you know, look at your home planet from low Earth orbit. You know, this is the first time humans were on the surface of the moon 50 years ago. But what are you going to do to make this happen in the future? That's my question to you. All right. You have some time for questions?
Yes, do you want them to ask your questions?
If we have time, sure.
Yes, we do have. חברים, יש לנו זמן לשאלות מהקהל. אז מי שרוצה לשאול שאלה, בבקשה להרים יד. אנחנו ניגש, יש כאן כמה ידיים. אוקיי, אפשר? אנחנו נתחיל. שאלה ראשונה.
איתן. טוב, אז...
שקט בבקשה. יש פה שאלה ראשונה, אז אנחנו מנסים לשמוע אותה.
טוב, מה הדבר שהכי אהבת במשימות?
What was the thing that you most loved in your missions?
The thing that I most loved during the missions, I think you could see from the picture, was looking back at planet Earth, because my whole life had been spent here on this planet, and everybody that I'd ever knew and every conversation I'd ever had, every place I'd ever been was down here. And when you get to space and you're going 25,000 kilometers per hour and you go around the Earth in 90 minutes, that's very humbling. That makes you feel very, very, very small. I mean, in 90 minutes, you can barely go from here to Tel Aviv, you know, in a day without traffic. And so, you know, that amount of time to go around the entire planet where, you know, 7 billion people are living right now was my favorite part.
Thank you very much. And another question.
Tip or recommendation that can help every person who dreams to be an astronaut?
What was the first part of that question?
Tip or recommendation that can help every person who dreams to be an astronaut?
If you have tips or recommendations for people who wants to be astronauts.
Okay, tips for wanting to become an astronaut. You know, I am I'm a professional astronaut. That's my job. So certainly there are many countries around the world that have their astronaut programs set up by their governments. For the most part, all of us had to go to college, and we had to have a technical degree. You know, science, engineering, math. That's a requirement to become a government astronaut. But then we had to take that degree and do something with it. And so people became experts in their field, whether it was astrophysics or a doctor or engineering or like myself as a pilot. And then you have the opportunity to go ahead and apply once you've had the experience based on your degree. And if you look at the biographies of the astronauts in ESA or America or Japan or even Russia, you'll see that these people have a lot of varied experiences in addition to their education. But nowadays, there's an opportunity to go in space as a commercial astronaut, as a private astronaut, as Eitan Steve did. So there's opportunities, hopefully, as there's more and more commercial flights, it'll become cheaper and cheaper, and more people have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you very much. We have another question. Quickie. תשאלי אותי מה את רוצה לשאול, אני אתרגם. How much time was you were in space?
On my first mission on the Space Shuttle Atlantis, it was shorter duration flights. I was in space for 11 days, and then on my second flight, I was in space for 5 months. Right now, Frank Rubio is in space. He's been up there for about 6 months. When he comes home in October, he will have had about 355 days in space, so almost 1 full year in space.
Thank you. Were there any damages or obstacles in your missions?
Were there any damages? With the International Space Station is about 400 kilometers high, and so it is underneath a lot of the satellites. And so satellites come through the space station's orbit, and we also have micrometeorites or pieces of, asteroids that actually float around the Earth and then get grabbed by our gravity and come through. So we talk damages. We have little holes of the micrometeorites as they hit the space station. So we can see the holes in the solar rays, but we have debris shields that protect the pressurized modules where the crew lives. And so that's how we keep the modules from being punctured by that and creating holes and losing our atmosphere.
Thank you very much. Another question. Be honest, okay? Did you have any fear to go to space?
Did I have any fear going to space? My first flight on the Space Shuttle Atlantis, you saw the picture of that rocket where there were 6 of us on board. There's something like 7 million parts, individual pieces of, equipment and bolts and electrical line and, tanks that all had to be assembled by humans, made by humans, assembled by humans, and all had to work perfectly to get us to space. And so with that many moving parts, you can't, you got to trust that everybody that's working on it did their very best to make sure that their part worked. And so I wasn't so worried about the space shuttle. For me, my wife was about 2 miles away at the viewing stand, and she was 9 months pregnant. And we knew that if I launched on that space shuttle mission, that I wouldn't be there for the birth of our daughter. So I was more scared for her than I was for me.
One last question. It's a very short one. Okay, over here.
Yeah. By your opinion, is it possible? By your opinion, is it possible to humanity to terraform Mars? By your opinion, is it possible for humanity to terraform Mars?
Okay, the question is it possible to terraform Mars? The question is I don't know. And so that's the fun part. If we are able to go to the moon, and are we able to use any of that soil to grow plants? Are we able to use any of that ice to make air? And how much of that are we able to then enclose in a habitat and make to not necessarily terraform the entire planet, but terraform certain areas? Will that then translate to Mars where there is some atmosphere and there is more ice? I don't know. I think that's a great idea, and certainly you watch movies and it looks like it would be a neat challenge for us as humans, because we don't want to be a single planet species. If 100 or 200 years from now there's some asteroid that's a planet killer, we don't want to all still be here when that happens. Yeah. All right, Maria.
Thank you very much.
If you come on up, I have one thing for Nof Hagalil. We have a montage of our space flight, so that's for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Randy? Thank you very much to Randy Breznik. תודה רבה לרנדי ברזניק. חברים, אני מתכבדת להזמין לבמה את איתי לוי מסוכנות החלל הישראלית לברך אתכם.
איזה קהל נרגש. חברים וחברות, כיף להיות איתכם כאן היום. שמעתי אתכם גם תוך כדי הרבה אנרגיות. זה בדיוק האנרגיות שצריך כדי להגיע לחלל. תראו, כמו שמרינה הציגה אותי, קוראים לי איתי לב, אני עובד בסוכנות החלל הישראלית, במשרד החדשנות, המדע והטכנולוגיה, וזה מגניב כמו שזה נשמע לעבוד בחלל. עכשיו, בהרמת יד, לא בצעקות, אתם יודעים כמה אנשים כמו רנדי יצאו מגבולות החלל, מגבולות כדור הארץ והגיעו לחלל? כמה אסטרונאוטים היו בהרמת יד רגע? מישהו ניחוש? אוקיי, 100? קצת יותר? כן, שם? הבחור בחולצה שחורה, תן לנו ניחוש. 100? 80, 100. אז מתחילת העידן האנושי בחלל, מהשיגור הראשון של יורי גגארין ב-1961 ועד היום, שוגרו בסך הכל בערך 630 אנשים מחוץ לגבולות כדור הארץ. בערך כל האנשים שבעולם, באולם הזה, כל הילדים והילדות וכל המבוגרים שנמצאים פה, מבין כל האנשים בכדור הארץ, זה כל מי שאי פעם יצא מכדור הארץ עד היום. אתם יודעים כמה אנשים עומדים לצאת מכדור הארץ בעשור הבא ובזה שאחריו? אנחנו מדברים כבר על אלפים ועשרות אלפים ואולי יותר מזה, ובעצם החלל עומד בפני מהפכה מטורפת. רנדי הזכיר את זה קצת בדברים שלו, את העובדה את העובדה שהתחילו טיסות מסחריות, כלומר לא רק סוכנויות חלל גדולות משגרות אסטרונאוטים לחלל, אלא גם חברות פרטיות, בטח שמעתם על אילון מאסק וספייסיקס, אבל יש עוד לא מעט חברות חלל אחרות שפועלות בתחום הזה. וזה בדיוק המקום שבו אתם נכנסים לתמונה, כי בשנים הקרובות תחום החלל הולך לעבור מהפכה אפילו עוד יותר גדולה. כי אם יותר אנשים יטוסו לחלל, אז אנחנו נצטרך לתכנן גם נמלי חלל, אבל גם חברות שיתנו שירותים לאנשים שטסים לחלל, לבוש ואוכל וכל מה שצריך כדי להתקיים, בין אם זה בתחנת חלל בינלאומית כמו שרנדי הראה לכם וסיפר, או במקומות והתיישבויות קבע או מלונות חלל וכל מיני דברים שנשמעים היום כמו מדע בדיוני, אבל הם לא מאוד רחוקים. תסתכלו ימינה ושמאלה, מי שיושבים לידכם, ולא מופרך בוא נגיד עוד 10 שנים, עוד 20 שנה, יכול להיות שחלק מהאנשים שנמצאים פה באולם, חלק מהילדים, תיקחו חלק במהפכה הזאת, וזה בדיוק מה שאנחנו רוצים לעשות. בשבוע החלל הישראלי, להגיד לכם, החלל קורה פה בישראל, ואתם יכולים לקחת חלק ממנו, זה לא אומר שחייבים להיות בואו נחזור רגע לשקט. זה לא אומר שאתם חייבים להיות אסטרונאוטיות או אסטרונאוטים. יש חברות חלל שפועלות בכל רחבי הארץ ועושות דברים מדהימים. יש חברה שפיתחה חליפת חלל שכנראה תשרת את האסטרונאוטים הראשונים שינחתו גם על הירח, עוד כמה שנים ינחתו שוב פעם, אבל גם על מאדים בפעם הראשונה, שוב בעוד 10 שנים, בעוד 15 שנה. אז חליפת חלל שמגינה על אסטרונאוטים מקרינה מפותחת פה בישראל. יש אפילו חברות חלל פה בעמק יזרעאל, לא רחוק מכם. אז התפקיד שלנו ומה שאנחנו רוצים להגיד לכם, זה אם אתם סקרנים, אתם סקרניות לתחום החלל, אתם יכולים לבחור בזה כמקצוע, ואתם יכולים גם סתם להסתקרן ולהמשיך לקרוא על זה. אז באמת שבוע החלל זה השבוע, הוא קורה כאן גם בנוף הגליל, והוא קורה בעוד עשרות מוקדים ופעילויות בכל רחבי הארץ. קהל רחב כמוכם מגיע, עשרות אלפי משתתפים. אני מקווה שנהנתם היום ושתמשיכו ליהנות בשבוע הזה, ותעסקו בחלל. תודה.
טוב, בפתיחת האירוע, כשנכנסתם לעולם כאן בברקוביץ', הייתה תערוכה של דגמים של הבתי ספר שלכם, של הנבחרות מבתי הספר שלכם, שקיבלו משימה, אתגר של הפקת חשמל מהחלל. אז אחרי ההצגה המרשימה שלהם לרנדי ולצוות, יש בעצם הכרזה מה הקטגוריות שאנחנו הענקנו לכם, יותר נכון שרנדי העניק לכם. אז ככה, הפרויקט המקורי ביותר הולך לאורט משה שרת. שהציגו פרויקט מדהים של הפקת חשמל מכוכב הלכת חמה בעזרת גלי מיקרוגל והבאתם מהשמש ישירות אל כדור הארץ דרך הפאנלים הסולריים, משהו מדהים. אורטי גללון בעצם, רגע, לפני שאתם מריעים לעצמכם, אורטי גללון קיבל שתי קטגוריות, יותר נכון. ההצגה הטובה ביותר והפרויקט המקצועי ביותר. כל הכבוד לכם. אני מבקשת, אחרי שאתם תצאו מכאן, יש לנו עוד יום ארוך, אחרי שתצאו מכאן, תוכלו להתרשם מהדגמים. ואני רוצה לומר לכם עוד דבר. בלובי של עולם הברקוביץ' נפתחה תערוכה ארצית לצילומים אסטרונומיים. אנשים, צלמים כמוני כמוכם, צילמו תמונות מדהימות של גרמי שמיים, של כל מיני תופעות אסטרונומיות שאנחנו יכולים להתרשם ולראות. ליד כל תמונה יש ברקוד להצבעה. לא רק שאני מזמינה אתכם להצביע, אני גם אומרת לכם שבסיום ההצבעה תתקיים הגרלה בין המצביעים שיזכו בפרסים ממש ממש שווים. אחד מהם זה הרישום לאגודה האסטרונומית הישראלית, והשני יהיה ביקור פרטי לכל המשפחה ב-V פלנט, הפלנטריום שלנו בנוף הגליל. אז אני מזמינה אתכם ממש להצביע. טוב, ביקור VIP. טוב, עם מסאז' וספה. לא. אני מזמינה אתכם להצביע. ועכשיו אנחנו נעבור להקרנת הסרט כוח משיכה, שאתם אולי חלקכם ראיתם, אולי חלקכם לא. שיהיה לכם המשך יום מקסים. רגע, הנה, אני מתכבדת להזמין לבמה את ראש העיר רונן פלוט לברך אתכם.
שקט בבקשה. חברים, שקט בבקשה. קודם כל אני מאוד שמח להגיע לי כאן. יש לנו שבוע חלל והיו הרבה מאוד פעולות בנוף פארק, והיום יש לכם פה אסטרונאוט אמיתי. הוא אמיתי. הגיע לי כאן כדי להיות יחד איתכם, ותנו לו מחיאות כפיים. זהו. אני עכשיו בא, סליחה חברים, סליחה. אני עכשיו בא מפגישה עם שר הביטחון שביקר כאן בנוף הגליל, וישבנו איתו על מספר פרויקטים מאוד גדולים ליישוב. הוא מצא זמן לא פשוט, זמן מסוכן ביותר הייתי אומר שקורה בארץ, והגיע לכמה שעות לנוף הגליל, ובירכתי אותו על כך וגם סיפרתי לו שאנחנו נמצאים בשבוע של חלל. אנחנו עושים את הכל על מנת שהנוער שלנו יוכל לבקר בפלנטריום, יוכל להכיר על כל הכוכבים שיש בעולם ויכול להיות שותף לכל מה שקורה. אז כשמגיע לפה אסטרונאוט, בן אדם הזה שהתנתק מאיתנו ועלה למעלה ויכול להגיע לישראל, להיפגש עם הנוער שלנו ויכול לספר, הוא הדוגמה של כולנו, דוגמה של עתיד, דוגמה שכולנו מברכים ומאחלים לאסטרונאוטים ישראלים גם להגיע, ואני יודע שיש כבר כמה שהם בהכנה. אני רוצה להודות לכם תלמידים יקרים, לאחל לכם בריאות, הרבה הצלחה, ואולי יושב פה אסטרונאוט אחד או שניים, ואנחנו נראה אותו בעוד כמה שנים. כל טוב, עלו והצליחו.
So, this is that same montage from Expedition 53 presented to Nof HaGalil.
זה מוענק, התמונות האלה מוענקות לנוף הגליל.
בבקשה לשמור על השקט.
Thank you very much. אני מודה לאסטרונאוט על התמונה. נשים אותה בלשכת ראש העיר, וכל מי שירצה יוכל להגיע ולהצטלם יחד איתה. תודה רבה, כל טוב.